I'm a mom in a 33-year-old man's body. I am 30, but I'm not taking care of myself. If I see something, I'm not kidding, it's over. I just saw Fight Club. I just saw Fight Club 3 months ago. And it sucks because it came out literally 20 years ago, and you can't have a conversation with someone. Sorry to keep getting up and down. Okay. But like, you can't have a conversation with people and be like, hey, Fight Club's great. Because they'll be like, fucking yeah. You know what else is good? Casablanca. But it's weird. I'm going through the thing that people went through in 1999. Where I'm just like, oh, I love Fight Club. And I hate capitalism. And I know that because I saw Fight Club, that great anti-capitalist movie distributed by Warner Brothers. I'm starting my own Fight Club. I'm starting my own Fight Club, but it's updated for 2019. First of all, different rules. Because they're not customer-friendly rules, right? I would be objecting right away. First of all, they'd be like, all right, rule number 1, you can't talk about Fight Club. Rule number 2, you can't talk about Fight Club. And I'd be like, hi? Sorry? Do we wait till the rules are done before we do questions? I'm Alex. I have a couple of issues with the first 2 rules. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, well, they're the same rule. And they're like, yeah, well, it's really important. And I'm like, well, that's very condescending to assume maybe rule number 1 should be listen. So then all of the other rules you totally get. And they're like, well, you can't talk about Fight Club. And I'm like, see, okay, so that's my other issue, because obviously we're all here because of word of mouth. This is a word of mouth thing. And then one guy's like, I found a Groupon. I'm like, he found a Groupon. And they're like, okay, well, rule number 3 is that, all right, well, okay, rule number 3 is that everybody has to fight. And I'm like, do you have to fight? What if we all just want to, I just come here because it's a bit social. And instead, I think maybe we should all read a book and discuss it. And they're like, this is not a debate. And I'm like, not everyone wants to fight. And then 1 or 2 other people back me up. They're like, actually, I don't want to fight. Another person's like, yeah, I've never liked fighting. This is how I spend time with men in a platonic setting. And then one person's like, I just masturbate. I'm like, he just masturbates? Okay, that's a little much. Rule number 3 should be no masturbating, I think. I think it should be, I think the rules, frankly, everyone should have to read the book. Not Fight Club, but the book that we picked that week. Like, this week's book is White Teeth by Zadie Smith, and everybody has to read White Teeth. And it's a good way for us to, like, take our shirts off and talk in a comfortable setting. And people will be like, Alex, I think you just won a book club. And I'm like, that does seem sound. We'll figure it out. The coolest woman I've ever met, by the way, is this woman, is 100% true, is a woman named Leah Adler. And Leah was 97 when she died, and I met her my first week living in Los Angeles. She owned a kosher restaurant, and I'm very kosher, which means I don't eat pork, shellfish, or anything else delicious. And by the way, in England, it's very hard because you guys are like, bacon, it's the national food. It's really good. And sometimes I'll go into it, but like pork is usually fine though. If I go into a place and I'm like, I don't eat pork, that's all right. But I was in Yo Sushi last week and they're like, do you have any allergies? And I was like, I don't eat shellfish. And they're like, you have a shellfish allergy? And I was like, what? And they're like, you need to leave right now. So you drink that water, there's bits of shellfish in there. We actually crumple up prawn crackers and put it in the ventilation. You need to get the fuck out of here right now. So I do eat in a lot of kosher restaurants. So when I was 18, I only ate in kosher restaurants. And here's the problem with most kosher restaurants. Because in some cities there are so few of them, they do everything. So like, they do every cuisine. So you walk into a kosher restaurant and they'll be like, we recommend the venison and the sushi and the trifle arrabbiata. I mispronounced the name of that fake dish. And it didn't work. Like, what are you? Every kosher restaurant has like a real immigrant mindset. They will do whatever it takes to survive. And so Leah owned this place in LA called the Milky Way. And I went in there, I was 18 years old, and I walk in. And here's the thing about, first of all, this is like the nicest place. It's dimly lit. There's never anybody in there. And they had like generally like pretty decent food. It's still like a little bit of kosherness about it. They're like, we do potato pancakes and sashimi. And you're like, okay, well, that's a bit much. But the woman was so nice, and she would never let me pay for anything. Like, I ate there for free like 3 or 4 times a week, and I was like, how does this lady keep this place open? And one day, she goes, hey, would you like to see my son's corner of the restaurant? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she takes me over to this corner, and it's completely decorated with photos and movie posters and an Oscar from Steven Spielberg. And I was like, Leia, your son is obsessed with Steven Spielberg. And she was like, my son is Steven Spielberg. And I was like, sure thing, lady. But now it turns out, like, if I ever run into Steven Spielberg, I'll have something to talk to him about. I'll be like, Steven, there's this old lady who believes that she's your mom. And you've met her, because there are photos of you with her everywhere in this restaurant. Also, I don't know how to break this to you. Have you checked where you keep your Oscar for Schindler's List? Because she has thieved your Oscar. But she was so cool. She was always there in, like, same khaki shirt, khaki pants. She was khaki head to toe, and she, like, I don't know, she ran this place like a doyen. And I think the cool thing about it was she never tried anything that wasn't very much her. You know, like, oh, real quick, I am curious, and I'm hoping you guys will, like, who is the coolest person you know? This is a bit of a thinker, but, like, I'm also curious how, like, kids are going to answer this question. But, like, sir, who's the coolest person you know? Do you mind if I ask? I was looking at the file behind you, but yeah, that'd be lovely if you... It's so funny, because Americans are, like, magician's assistants in waiting. Like, everyone is so excited. They're like, cut me in half! But British people will never speak up. Sir, would you mind answering, like, who's a cool person to you?
I know or that I know
in general, that you know or know of.
Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt's pretty cool. I think my mom is pretty cool, but, like, because she's never trying to be anything she's not. How about you? Who do you think is cool? Roger Federer, that's a really good one. And he's Swiss. The flag, it's a big plus. It's just for Sam. It's just for Sam. It's a very dumb joke. Miss, how about you? Who do you think is the coolest person you know? Boy, you are like, please don't cut. What? Enya?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I mean, that is...
She has her own castle in Ireland.
She has her own castle, and Barbara Streisand has her own mall in her basement, and I think about that all the time. Because if you had a friend, Barbara, who lived above a mall, you'd be like, Barbara's tacky as hell, but Barbara Streisand's like, we're going to build a mall in my basement. And he has her own castle? I think that's pretty neat. You know who else has her own castle? The Queen. No. Someone told me the other day the reason Victorians had so many castles was because they would have a big party and then they wouldn't clean up. When the smell got too much, they just moved to another castle. And I'm like, that is such an irresponsible cleaning policy. And also how I spent my first 3 years in New York City. Like, once it got too messy, I was like, we should probably move. We're just gonna go. We will not clean up. We're just leaving this. Sir, how about you? You're wearing a very cool jacket, so I feel comfortable asking.
Who's the coolest?
The coolest person that you know. No, personally. Mm-hmm.
Eddie Vedder.
What?
Eddie Vedder, since you know.
Eddie Vedder? You know Eddie Vedder?
Yeah, not cool.
Okay.
Person.
No, I mean, that makes sense. He's very grungy.
Yeah.
He's really grungy.
Dogs are pretty cool.
Dogs are so cool. Dogs are the best. And dogs know they're cool, that's the problem. That's why they shit everywhere. They're pretty cool. Cats are a bit much. Cats are too much. I think dogs can understand English, but I don't think cats can, because otherwise they'd be like, okay, we're sorry. Dog's very humble. Depends on the dog, though. I got bit by a dog a couple of weeks ago. I got bit by a pit bull. 100% true. I was walking by the pit bull. I was committing this really unforgivable sin. I was reading a book while I was walking, and the pit bull was like, we hate books. And it bit me on the leg. And I don't like people who are pit bull fans. Not like Mr. Worldwide. He's amazing. If I was bit by Mr. Worldwide, I'd be like, I was literally bit by this pit bull. And by the way, I told my mom, and she loves animals, and she's like, they're a misunderstood breed. I was like, no, they're not. And the reputation they have is 100% deserved. And occasionally people who are fans of pit bulls were like, that's not fair. And I'm like, it is very fair. Because, like, there's no defense of people are just like, there's a stigma about pit bulls just because they regularly attack and kill small children. And they're like, if you really train a pit bull, if you waterboard it and put it through a Guantanamo Bay style training exercise, then you can get it to sit still and not murder you for 10 seconds. But yes, dogs are pretty cool. All right. I was shocked that no one said Beyonce. That's what I think is pretty cool. I think Beyonce and Christianity are pretty much the same thing. Which is that the person is pretty much the best, but the fans are way too invested at this point. I think the coolest person in the world can't be a celebrity. It's like when People magazine is like, this is the sexiest man alive. And you're like, I mean, sure, but not really. Like, the sexiest man alive is someone that none of us have ever met. He's an Italian car mechanic who volunteers at a petting zoo. And he constantly fixes the nuns' cars in town for free. And he has a complicated interior life, but he's constantly working on himself. And a classic Peugeot that he's building from scratch. That's the sexiest man alive. It's definitely not fucking Johnny Depp. So the coolest person in my life, obviously, I think is my friend Neil is pretty cool. I don't have a story about Neil. I don't know why I mentioned that. Neil's great. All right. I really don't think celebrities can be considered as cool people because their lives are so insane. And like Taylor Swift gave an interview a little while ago, and she's like, I take the tube once a month just so I can be like a normal person. And it's like, it's not taking the tube that makes you a normal person. It's not giving yourself a medal for it. Like there are celebrities now that are like everyone, like Keanu Reeves, I thought was a movie star, but apparently he's like a demigod of some kind. People fucking love Keanu Reeves. People are like, Keanu Reeves is the coolest man in America. I'm like, he's an actor. He's not. And my friend was like, no, he's Keanu. He's so great. I heard he went to a wedding and he sat at the singles table. Isn't that cool? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, unless you're another guy at the singles table. Then it's like a nightmare. Imagine you're like a computer programmer from Chicago named Ted, and you're so excited about this wedding. You get dressed up, you have a tie, you get your hair cut, you're like, oh, I'm gonna find some love at this wedding. And like, you show up at the ceremony, and it's nice, they've done a really good job, and like, you get to the single table, and they've really splurged on the nameplate, so like, it's good stock paper. And you're like, oh my god, this is so cool, I'm gonna get so made. And then you look at, and you're like, oh, that's funny. The nameplate next to me says, Keanu, and I've only ever oh, shit. And it gets to the table, and you're like, hey, man. No, yeah, I know. I'm Ted. Yes, I know you played someone named Ted. I know your name. Great. I'm a computer programmer. Yes, I know you played a computer programmer. Thank you very much. Yes, but he was also God. I know that he was also God. Thank you. And then you're like, screw you, Keanu Reeves. And then you're like, yes, it's a new tie. Thank you, I bought a new tie. Thought I'd get laid. Instead, I'm sitting next to Keanu Reeves, who is taking all of the attention at this wedding. It's like when Bill Murray shows up at other people's like celebrations. They're like, isn't that cool? And I'm like, no. It's another story where Bill Murray made someone's quinceañera about him. Just like, leave life alone. Let other people have their moments. I quite like vintage clothing, by the way. That's a cool thing. Because I prefer clothing with a backstory. And I'd rather have clothing that someone might have died in instead of clothing that someone might have died making. So like I really prefer a pair of old shoes instead of Nike. That's the oh my god bit. And also my type is someone who like wears vintage clothing. Like quite like a cool person. Like my type as like a lady is one of these women who's like more of an old man on the inside. And so they're very like, I dated a lady for a while, and at the end I was like, I don't think I want to date her. I think I just wanted to own a record player. And my type is someone who is vulnerable and extremely literary and very emotionally unavailable. And I was telling Sam, and he was like, so basically Anne Frank. And I was like, yeah. I want to date Anne Frank. So I was, fuck. And so I was on a first date with someone, and she told me, this is true. She was like, just so you know, I'm a witch. I was like, okay, sick. I won't tell anybody. And she's like, do you want to know what that means? And I was like, nah. And she's like, well, I'm a secular witch. And I was like, all right. Because it's boring to hear anyone talk about their relationship to God. And so, like, everyone does now, and it's so personal. And so, like, it was the first thing we talked about when we sat down, and I didn't want to know about it. And she's like, well, I'm a hard polytheist. And I was like, thank you. Should we order appetizers? And then we get into, like, what we believe in. And she was like, do you know what that means? And I was like, no, I don't. But I bet you're going to tell me. And she's like, well, I'm a secular witch and a hard polytheist who is, and this is an exact quote, she went, I'm loosely tied to one God on a family level, but I relate to another God on a more spiritual level. And I was like, all right, sick. So I would think that we'd start with the arancini and we move along. And she's like, why won't you talk about this? And I was like, if you want an honest answer, it's because I'm so uncomfortable talking about God, and this is also kind of blowing my mind, because I never met a polytheist before. So like I spent my whole life wondering like whether there is a God or there isn't a God, and I'd never been like, maybe he has friends! And also, like, I believe in God. I just think he has a lot to answer for, if I'm being honest with you. Like all of the hurricanes and the cancers and stuff. And so, like you split it out over different gods. They can just be like, oh, that's the other God. I don't know anything about this. And so I'm avoiding the conversation, and she's like, why aren't you engaging with this? And I was like, because spirituality is personal. It's not like pink hair. It's not like the first thing you can show people to show that you have a personality. And like, and that relationship would not have worked out anyway. It didn't extend too long. We went on 2 dates. And it would have worked out because I want to send my kids to a Jewish school called the Yeshiva, and she would have wanted to send them to Hogwarts, so I can't have it. By the way, on the second date, here's the thing. Like, she was still down to keep going, but she had said something. She's like, there's just a lot that you're not attuned to. And I was like, okay. And she's like, do you want to know? And I was like, no, I don't. I really don't. I'm letting it go because I don't have anything to add. And at one point she got offended because I was like, so you practice witchcraft? And she's like, it's the first thing I told you, that I was a secular witch. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a secular Jew, but I enjoy observing Shabbos every now and again. Do you practice witchcraft? And she's like, that is a misconception that has gotten thousands of witches burned at the stake over thousands of years. And without really thinking, I was like, well, that's how you kill a witch. So no third dates. Although the funny thing is, at one point I told it, this is true, I told it, and it is a missed opportunity. I always think of the funny thing like months later, but I told a joke. She went, oh my God, that's so funny. And I wish I'd been like, oh my God? Like, which, is it the one that you relate to on a family level, or is it one that you relate to on a more spiritual level? Okay, apparently it's not that funny now. I want to talk about my mom really quickly, and then we'll move on to the next episode. I went with my mom to see Elton John on his farewell tour, and I really want her to have a good time because I've seen Elton John on previous farewell tours, but I really think that he means it this time. And my mom and Elton John have a lot in common. They're both fabulous bitches that I really care about. And I don't know how my mom will feel about that joke. And by the way, saying that an Elton John show, if you haven't seen it, I assume because you're British that everyone, when you're born, they're just like, here are tickets to an Elton John show. But if you haven't seen it, calling an Elton John show a bit of a production is like calling Bill Gates a nerd who has done well for himself. Because there are revolving stages. There are fireworks, there are costume changes. There's like a costume change every 3 songs. There's a wig change at some point. And I was like, that wig might be my wig because my hair has been blown off by this show. It's so cool. It's such, and by the way, they have one of those, they They have one of those staircases that descends from like the backdrop to the stage, but he is old, so it does have a bit of a geriatric vibe, like he actually needs it to get down to his piano. Do you know what I mean? Like when an elderly relative can't go up and down the stairs anymore, they install that thing. It felt like Elton John was like, we'll just have $1 million one of those installed. It'll be fine. We'll crust it with gold. Nobody will notice. And so after every single song, he stands up and he does this. He flares his coat out behind him and he takes a big bow. And there's one moment though, and it ruins the whole show for me. You know when old men tuck their shirts in, but they don't button the most bottom button. So there's just like a little bit of, there's like a triangle of fish belly showing. So Elton John stands up after Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, and he flares the coat out, and I see this fish belly, and it undoes the whole thing. All of the rockets, all of the semaphore, all the backup dancers, and the hieroglyphics in the back, like, it just feels like insane. That like this one little bit of fish belly undid the whole thing, and I didn't want to say anything because my mom is like having the time of her life, and so like show ends and he gets on that like stand-up stair lift to go back up the stairs and he waves and we're like, goodbye Elton John, and we're walking out and I'm like, Mom, what'd you think of the show? And she went, someone needs to teach Elton John how to button a fucking shirt. And I was like, that is a cool lady. Also, once we were in I don't know why I'm going to tell 3 stories about my mom, I'm so sorry. Once we're in an elevator, and I was 6 years old, and I remember this, and we confirmed this over the phone with her, because you know when you're a kid, sometimes you have a memory, and you're like, that's not a real memory, it's like a little myth. My mom said this is 100% true, with one exception that I'll tell you at the end. She was standing there wearing a mink coat that she had inherited from her grandmother, who had brought it from Europe. And this woman, and my mom loves animals, but this woman standing next to her went, do you know how many mink died to make that coat? My mom went, not enough because there should be a hood. And we asked my mom about that on the phone, and my mom went, that story is 100% true, but it was sable. It's apparently a different kind of fur. I didn't know that. I was like, it was smoked fish, the whole coat. Also, this is the last story about my mom. We won't do all of them on the radio, but I want to tell you all of them. My mom met Bridget Christie, who's like, does anyone know who Bridget Christie is? Woo if you do? Yeah, a couple of woos. Bridget Christie's like a really sharp and funny and edgy comedian. And I took my mom, she's a political comedian, she's here, and I took my mom to see a Bridget Christie show. And she, and like my mom doesn't know anything about British politics. My mom and dad and my girlfriend at the time and I was like, we'll bring mom to a Bridget Christie show. We'll see what she thinks. We'll see what her and my dad thinks. It's probably gonna go wrong because she doesn't know anything about politics. My mom is enjoying the shit out of this show. And Bridget Christie's jokes are all about like Labor and Lib Dems and the Conservatives and like, you know, this is back in 2015. So like she's doing jokes about Nick Clegg. My mom is cracking up and I was like, this is so weird that she's enjoying this. And at one point, again, this is before Corbyn, she goes, Bridget says, picking a leader for Labor is like picking a tap out of a kitchen catalog. And my mom cracks up. And I'm just like, this woman doesn't know anything about labor. She still thinks, I'm pretty sure that she thinks Bridget is talking about pregnancy when she talks about labor. There's no way. And my dad is sitting there like, who the fuck is Nick Clegg? And like, the show ends, and my mom is like, Alex, we loved it. And my dad is looking at her, but he's not gonna contradict her. He's like, the mink coat lady, he's like, yeah, we loved it. And she's like, I have to meet Bridget. And my girlfriend is like, that, she's also a comic. She was like, that is not happening. And I was like, she has to meet Bridget. And so like I bring her over because I want to see what like Cheryl Edelman from Cincinnati, Ohio is gonna say to like the toughest political comedian in North London. And I'm like, Bridget, this is my mom. And my mom goes, we love the show. My dad is still standing there like, what's a liberal Democrat? I don't get it. Aren't they the same thing? And like, my mom was like, we love the show, and I identified with everything you said. And I was like, really, Cheryl? And this is the kicker. She looks at Bridget and she went, that joke about picking a labor leader, I 100% understand it. Because when we remodeled the kitchen, it was so hard to pick a tap out of the kitchen catalog. You have no idea. And then Bridget looks at her. My girlfriend's covering her face with her hands, wanting to disappear. And Bridget looks at my mom and she goes, they all look the same, don't they? My mom was like, yeah, they all look the same. It's chrome and brush chrome. How can you tell the difference? And that's the coolest thing. Like, my mom knew anything about politics. It would have been like a boring conversation, but instead she had like a 30-minute chat with Bridget Christie that like the two other comedians are locked out of because they're like, it's unbelievable. And like, you let them pick, but they pick one tap and you're like, this is wrong. I forget any lines. Okay. All right, we'll see. Like, my mom's never performing. That's the one thing, is that people are always, I feel like people are always performing. That's the biggest issue with cool. That's why I felt like it's important to talk about it on this show, because I think people feel this pressure now, and I think it's like presenting young people with like a huge problem in terms of like, we're always supposed to be positive, we're always supposed to be happy, we're always supposed to be like up on what everyone else is talking about and taking photos of, and I think it's really causing a ton of mental stress. And it's very, very unhealthy, and I feel really bad because I see other people doing it, like people who are very unhappy posting like very like experience-oriented photos on Instagram, and like I feel a little guilty because the stuff that makes me feel cool is very exterior. Like, the coolest I've ever felt. Occasionally now, I've been doing comedy for 10 years, and very occasionally I will get recognized, and if I'm being totally honest, it makes my day. Because you're just like, yeah, you do comedy to 30 people in a basement. That's how it usually goes. But occasionally I'll see, and by the way, the people that recognize me are exactly like me. They're Jews with low self-confidence. And so the way I'm recognized, I'll be on the tube and someone very close to me will be like, Alex Elelman. And I'm like, hi. And they're like, comedian? I'm like, yes. And they're like, good. And they'll just like fade away into the crowd. I'm like, that's my fan base. People seem to be watching your clips online, but no one's buying tickets. And I'm like, that's my fan base. They don't want to leave the house. So I'm in a restaurant in New York. This is about a month ago. And New York, I lived there for 10 years, and I never felt, not just because it's on theme, I never felt trendy enough for New York. I never felt comfortable in New York, and I never felt comfortable in New York's like very trendy restaurants, because I'm quite loud, and New York is quite loud, and the two things don't really go together. And I always would pretend to be a little bit more of a New Yorker than I was. Like, no matter what I was doing, I'd just go, I'm walking here! Regardless of whether or not I was in fact walking. I'm just letting everybody know. So I'm walking through this restaurant and shouting. And a very trendy restaurant. And I'm like presenting a very confident look, but I'm wearing exactly this. And so I'm just the whole time, and I hope that I'm not the only person who does this in fancy places. I'm like, I don't belong here. I don't belong here. And at any point, someone's gonna be like, sorry, excuse me? And I'll turn around and they'll be like, are you mostly interested in like book clubs? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, you gotta go. You can't be in here. These are people who like techno, not fiction. Can you get the fuck out? And so I'm on my way to the bathroom, and I see these two girls at a table, and one of them goes, and the other looks and is like, and they wave at me, and I was like, fucking, okay. I was like, yeah. And I'm like, and they're like, and I go into the bathroom, and I use the bathroom, washing my hands, and I was like, I am so cool. I belong here, and it's not just like friendly incels who are my fans. It's also like these sweeties. And as I'm washing my hands, I was like, oh no. I know one of those people. And by the way, if you think this story is gonna go where I'm like, and I had slept with one, that's not, I would recognize one of 6 people. I'm not gonna get to the table and be like, oh, hi, Rachel. I didn't know you still lived here. I thought you moved to Atlanta. How's your sister? Did you get the thing on your hip checked out? Like, I know everything about everyone I've ever slept with. It's gonna be a tale of my wedding. Yeah, they're heroes. They've made the ultimate sacrifice. They're getting good treatment. I'm shut up. Don't go with that. What are you doing? And I go over to I leave the bathroom, and I'm like, I'm just gonna ignore them because I'm gonna hope that they are comedy fans and they've seen me before, or they've bought tickets to a UK tour, which includes a week in London that starts February 10th. Okay. And I'm walking back, and I'm trying to ignore them, but one of them waves at me, and I was like, oh shit. I had math class with one of those people. definitely a math class, one of those people. And I start walking over, and I'm like, it's definitely, I was like, did I sit next to her in math class, or was she on the other side of the room? And I get to them, and I'm like, hi. And they're like, hey. And I'm like, what's up? And they're like, can we order? And I was like, excuse me? They're like, can we order food? And I was like, and by the way, everyone else in this restaurant was not wearing like this for their wait. They're wearing full suits. All the waiters had suits on. And I'm just like, and by the way, here's why I think I am a tiny bit cool. I was like, yeah. What would you like to eat? And they're like, what's good? And I'm like, everything.